Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about the most curious part of the entire raid. What was it called again? Rulk, can you remind us?
The Upended. The Upended. The Upended. The Upended.
Ah, yeah, that thing. Rulk keeps going on and on and on about the Upended so many times, and he even mentions it in the Preservation mission. But the thing is, we actually know very little in the beginning about what the Upended is, and there's very little that's told to us about that through the game. But today we're going to be exploring what the Upended is, what it does, and why I think it matters to the story of the raid overall. So, before we get into this, I want to go ahead and point out that a lot of what I'm going to be covering in this video is ground that's already been trodden by the good Sir Myling Games. I'll link his channel and in particular his video on the Upended down in the description because you know what? He made a really fantastic piece of investigative content on this subject. Definitely check out what he's been saying on this front. So, aside from Rulk talking constantly about the Upended itself in vague, menacing terms, I think our biggest hints towards what the Upended actually is comes from a few places. First of all, when you finish the first encounter, you get this view of the massive block above the Worm Mother Saita, and you hear this.
The Upended. A triumvirate. Opportunity, preservation, salvation. It will serve the deserving, crush the defiant.
In the same area in Preservation, you hear this.
The Upended. A title suitable for that which turns worlds upside down.
Our next hint comes from the third encounter, which is located in the exhibition area. However, when you take a look at this in the Triumphs note of the raid, when it tells you that you need to complete in particular all encounters in certain elemental or class challenges, it will note that this part of the raid and this encounter in particular is known as the Upended Summit. And when at the end of this encounter the doors open, you see that thing again, the giant block. Rulk even says more about the Upended in this moment once again. Take a listen to that.
Resilient, but credulous. You came to conquer, moved pieces, turned gears. To us you sought harm, but performed aid. The Upended will live out its namesake. This world will be sealed from the light, leaving your kind to suffer. You are not fit to serve the deserving. You will not rise from the deep, but drown in it.
All of this seems to point very clearly to the idea that the Upended is this massive block hanging above Saita, the mother of all worms. If this wasn't made even more clear, the Titan lore from the raid armor actually tells us a little bit more on it, because it talks about Saita's perspective. Take a listen to this particular snippet from the Resonant Fury Titan mark. My subjugator served his witness well, but he could not escape the very words of his witness, which beat against his mind whenever Savathûn stood in his presence. The universe is wide, my child, with wrath matching if not exceeding yours in its vastness. Seek it before it seeks you, or it will be your end. I became a vessel for his jealousies, a source of power for his Upended to consume, to see Savathûn's world shattered should she ever step out of line. In the deep, my children pay a price in servitude for survival. In ascendance, the Hive pay a price in servitude for power. In the dark, I pay a price in servitude so that others may be nurtured. This not only reveals that, yes, the Upended is the thing that is above Saita, but also it reveals both Saita's relationship to it and its function. There was a really good question when the raid launched, which was whether Saita, the worm god, was powering up the block, or whether the block was powering up Saita, and it turns out that it is in fact the Upended, the block, pulling power out of Saita. So with all of that being said, we can now kind of understand what the Upended is. It's this thing hanging in the air, just above the worm god. However, it's also telling us a little bit more about its main function through this lore. Saita states that it's something that's meant to be used so that Savathun's throne world can be shattered if retaliation is necessary. What's more is that we learn from the Resonant Fury Warlock bond that the Upended was actually going to be used by Rolk in this way until Savathun stopped him. The lines in question that reveal this from Savathun's perspective show the following. It's her sending a message to the Witness when normally Rolk would be sending these, and it states the following. No longer does this plane live with only the lackluster ambience of darkness. It is brighter now. My truth can finally thrive. No longer do the walls that birthed our parasitic chains house your machinations, the tools and parasites within shattered. And no longer does your subjugator subjugate. He lies ensnared within his obtrusive eyesore, for upon Rolk's attempt to subdue me with that toy he's annoyingly always on about, his upended, I was able to counteract it, showing firsthand the power bequeathed to me in my new state. Now, the once great pyramid lies fractured, a sight you will become familiar with. So Rolk was absolutely going to use the upended to shatter Savathun's throne world, implying that it's some form of superweapon capable of wiping out a very large area, even potentially a dimension or a world of some kind. But with that said, what does this superweapon do? How does it do this? Well, I think if we're going to look into that, we need to listen back to the context that Rolk tells us about the upended. So it's also at this point that I really want to go ahead and direct you once more to Mylin's video, because again, he goes into all of this stuff, and again, it's really excellent. Go watch it. Mylin did a great job of gathering the following quotes and adding context to them. Take a listen.
The Upended has turned countless worlds upside down. Yours will be no different. The Upended will live out its namesake. This world will be sealed from the light.
These two quotes, and a bunch of the others that we've sourced for this video, by the way, are from the fantastic Destiny Lore Vault. In case you've not heard of them, they are a channel that archives moments in Destiny's lore to help everyone get a point of reference that is unified. It helps cut through the hearsay. Anyway, Mylin focuses on this next piece of dialogue in his video, and I think it's worth focusing on it too momentarily. Take a listen to this full quote about the Upended, which is played in the Preservation mission.
The Upended. A title suitable for that which turns worlds upside down. When I was still uninitiated, I would stand guard at my post. I would look to the sky and see the two suns of my Lubre. One eternally shaded in the dark, the other always a brilliant blue. And in them, I had seen the folly of our kind. A fear of something we believed bigger than us, and a reliance on that which kept us. That blue sun that we harnessed our power from. A simple reversal of that power cracked the blue in half, shut it off, and Lubre died. I did not know it at the time, but it was necessary. And now that Savathun has trapped me within these walls, it will be necessary again. My witness. Whether I survive Savathun's betrayal or not, the Upended will ensure we salvage our perfect goal. The final abyss awaits us all.
Mylin's speculation here is that Lubre and the Sapphiric Converter are somewhat connected to the role of the Upended and to how it functions, essentially stating that energy can be built up and either be reversed or redirected into whatever is being attacked, essentially shattering it. That is a gross oversimplification of what Mylin said, and also there are many more points of nuance, such as the role of Lubre's sun and the Lubrean technology of the Sapphiric Converter that's actually allowed them to do this. So again, I'll say a third time, watch his video. Seriously, go watch it. However, I wanted to go ahead and focus on a few different lines and focus a little more closely on something which feeds into my own theory of this. So if you will indulge me, take a listen to these lines.
This world will be sealed from the light.
Now pair this with the line from the final encounter that Rolk can sometimes say to your fire team.
The Upended has turned countless worlds upside down.
Add in this line that we get from Rolk, which we see when we get our first really good look at the Upended, after the first encounter.
The Upended. A triumvirate. Opportunity, preservation, salvation. It will serve the deserving, crush the defiant.
And finally, let's revisit this Rolk line from the start of the preservation section.
The Upended. A title suitable for that which turns worlds upside down.
Okay, so, played a bunch of lines for context, and hear me out. Lots of those things do not directly talk about destroying worlds, and I think there is a reason for that. I think that Rolk is stating that the Upended turns worlds upside down, and I think that that is an important distinction, which makes me believe that the Upended is not purely a destroyer. My theory is that it is in fact not a destroyer at all, as much as it is an engine for relocating worlds. The Upended is supposed to turn worlds upside down, and this is its most commonly quoted function. It would seal Savathun's throne world from the light if given the chance, as is stated again in one of those quotes. And perhaps most importantly, Rolk notes that it's a triumvirate, not simply of salvation, which is an obvious statement on the object's power, given power by darkness, but also that it represents opportunity and preservation, which seems to imply that it doesn't immediately kill things when the device is activated or destroy them. You know what all this reminds me of? Particularly the idea of preservation, the idea of opportunity, the idea of turning worlds upside down, the idea of relocating them. It reminds me of the way that the Witness and the Black Fleet stole our worlds, Titan, Io, Mercury, and Mars. They vanished, and there are nothing but anomalies of darkness where they should be now. Almost as if they've been taken into another dimension, a darker dimension. But you know what else was taken into this dark dimension, these anomalies? Where the planets should be? The pocket of reality that's so difficult to access? The Glycan. Katabasis' records hint to similar kinds of relocation between dimensions occurring in the ship during the times at which Callus was attempting to commune with the voice behind the darkness. Take a listen to this one line in particular, which I think is a reasonably good explanation, or at least demonstration of this moment.
Another decrypted entry. We hit Acheron's wall and sank. Straight down to the deep. Gly is in a bad way after the dive, all twisted. I'm all twisted. Whole crew rattling around in my skull like they're thinking for me. Scorn. What they used to be, what they are now. Dive must have opened the cells. Someone's gotta clip their horns, especially the big one. Or we're dead.
Acheron, for those of you who don't know, is kind of code. It's one of the rivers that flows into the underworld in Greek mythology, as well as being a real river in Greece itself. By hitting Acheron's wall, Katabasis is sort of implying here that he's gone to the other side. The lore from the captain's logbook, recovered from the Glycan, seems to back this theory, that after Callus successfully communed with the voice in the darkness, the Glycan was dragged deeper into the darkness anomaly than had been previously possible, and was then trapped there, and was subject to the machinations of whatever had grabbed the ship. Its parts and pieces were sort of internally relocated, things no longer connected as they should, the ship became a maze. It's something that further demonstrates this power of darkness to be able to sort of mishmash things and relocate different areas. But what's most telling about this theory, for me, are these two further pieces of evidence. The first comes from Ashamir's investigation into the response of the pyramids to physical attacks. He discovers this in the Duress and Egress lawbook, and leans towards all these different theories with his observations. He he discovered that the pyramids weren't able to be conventionally attacked, because it was impossible to hit them with anything meaningful. The reason for this was because of a field that was surrounding them, a field which would then take whatever was headed their way, missiles in Asher's instance, and would then port it into another dimension so they could be held there. This further reinforces the point that the darkness has this ability to relocate objects into a different plane of existence. For the final piece of evidence in this theory, though, I want to go ahead and replay one line from Rulk, and then play one line from the Glycan investigation. Take a listen to this.
This world will be sealed from the light.
And then finally, listen to what Savathun, as Osiris, says when we first enter the Glycan.
There's no light here.
This, for me, sells me on the idea. I'm personally theorizing that the Upended isn't some superweapon so much as it's a world relocation engine, one that takes places or dimensions or throne worlds or planets and can pull them into the depths of whatever dimension the Witness controls, into a place where the light cannot reach. Before I would have said that this was the Ascendant Plane, and perhaps it's merely a deeper portion of the Ascendant Plane, but given our experience on the Glycan, what we see in the Vow of the Disciple, and considering the way that Savathun's throne world is located in the Ascendant Plane, I'm unsure. Either way, all of this theorizing leads me to believe that the Upended is not simply a destroyer. It doesn't so much shatter worlds as it smothers them in darkness by pulling them down into the depths of a place where light cannot reach. That is what I think the Upended does. But again, all of this is theory. Everyone who said anything on this is simply grappling with Rulk's words, and there is no easy way to truly confirm what's going on. So, again, anything that's stated at the moment is still theory at best. One last thing I wanted to leave you all with, which is more food for thought, really, is this. Rulk hacks our ghost communication objectives during the raid. If you pull up your ghost at any point in the raid, you'll actually see messages that are clearly from him. It's why your objectives in the raid read as so strange, such as the final objective, which just reads drown, drown, drown. In that final objective, which appears during the final boss encounter, you will then see that Rulk leaves you with an opening bit of context in your objectives. A sentence that simply reads, "The Upended is alive," before going on to talk about how the only thing we have left to do is lie down and embrace the darkness before our final days. Whatever that means, the Upended is alive, I think it's fair to say that the Upended is more than first meets the eye, and even with its function, it's intriguing to wonder what could truly be meant by that last statement. What sense is it alive in? Is there more to it? Is this perhaps a vestige of some darker power of the Witness? Is this perhaps something we'll see again? Are there more upended engines, upended weapons out there? Perhaps in time we'll discover more about it. Perhaps not. But in the meantime, we at least know what this is. This block in the middle of the raid is the Upended. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, go ahead and leave a like and do all the typical stuff that you would normally do, such as subscribing and hitting the bell next to subscribe. Of course, you can also leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. This is a very open-ended piece of lore. Tell me what you think the Upended does, what you think it is. Do you think it is a world destroyer? Do you think it is a world relocation engine? Do you think that it's something that's purely an artifact of darkness? Do you think it floods the world with darkness? What do you reckon it does? Let me know down below in the comments section. But as per usual, know that your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.